I'll never forget that night, no matter how hard I try. It was the exact moment I realized everything in my life was falling apart. We were at a company event for my wife, Sarah. The evening was full of the usual chit-chat, laughs, and a few too many drinks, but things took a turn just before we were about to head out. That's when I spotted this guy, Alex, one of Sarah's coworkers. He had this arrogant smirk plastered on his face, like he knew something I didn't. And before I even thought it through, I swung at him. One clean punch, square across his jaw. For a second, everything went still. Then chaos hit. People started rushing in, some were checking on Alex, others were giving me that judgmental look, like I was the bad guy in all of this. But I couldn't care less about what they thought. What mattered to me was the truth. It didn't take much for him to set me off. His whole attitude screamed it loud and clear. He'd been with my wife. The way he looked at me, that cocky grin, it was all I needed to see. Sarah was freaking out, yelling at me over all the noise. "What the hell, Ben? Why did you hit him?" she screamed. I kept my voice steady, even though I was boiling inside. "Because he slept with you." "Do I really need to say more?" She stared at me like I had lost my mind. "He didn't even say a word to you," she shot back. "He didn't have to," I replied coldly. "I've known for weeks, Sarah. I just didn't know it was him." Her eyes were wide, filled with tears and anger. "I can't believe you'd accuse me of this," she shouted. "Well, believe it," I said, grabbing her arm and dragging her outside to the hotel balcony, away from all the curious eyes and whispers. The cool night air didn't do a damn thing to calm me down. "Tell me the truth, Sarah. How long has this been going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. She just stood there, staring at me, speechless. But her silence told me everything I needed to know. It was over. Whatever trust we had was completely gone. Still, I needed to hear her say it, no matter how much it tore me apart. My heart was racing as I stood there, but I tried to stay composed. Sarah wiped at her face, trying to pull herself together, but the tears just kept coming. "Ben, this is crazy. You're making it worse," she said, her voice cracking with frustration. I wasn't about to let her play the victim. "Just tell me the truth, Sarah. How long have you been with him?" Her lips trembled as she stammered. "I haven't been with him. I'd never do that to you." I couldn't take it anymore. "Stop lying. You think I haven't noticed? The way you've been acting? You think I'm blind? I've known something was off for weeks, but I didn't want to believe it. And now here we are." Sarah broke down, her words turning into a jumbled mess of sobs and denials. "I'm not lying, Ben. You're being paranoid. I love you. I would never. I couldn't." I shook my head and pulled out the cigar she'd given me for my last birthday. Back then, that little gift had meant a lot to me. It felt like a symbol of our bond, or at least what I thought our bond was. But now, lighting it up just felt like a cruel reminder of how clueless I'd been. I sat down next to her while she kept crying, but I didn't feel any sympathy. "Sarah, I've been piecing it all together. It's in the little things you say when we're around friends. The jokes you make about me behind my back, those harmless comments that aren't really harmless. At first, I didn't catch on, but those jokes, they weren't just jokes. You were testing the waters, trying to get people on your side for when you walked away from me." Her face twisted in confusion. "What are you even talking about? Those were just for fun. You know I didn't mean any of it." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, sure. It's all fun and games until it isn't. You think I didn't notice the way you talked about me? The way you'd laugh with the girls, making up stories about how I snore too loud or how I don't pull my weight around the house. It's like you were setting me up as the bad guy, so you could leave without feeling guilty. I never meant it like that," she mumbled, still sobbing. I sighed, feeling the weight of her betrayal sinking in. "The truth is out now, Sarah. You've been seeing him, haven't you? You've been with Alex, and now you're stuck facing it." Her silence told me more than words ever could. We just sat there, neither of us saying anything. It felt like time stopped for hours, but it was probably only a few minutes. I could still hear the party going on inside, the music and chatter seeping out onto the balcony. But it felt distant, like it belonged to some other world. My world was collapsing right in front of me, and there was no way out. Sarah looked completely defeated, slouched in that wire chair she had been laughing from earlier in the night. "Ben, I never wanted it to end like this," she said, her voice shaky. "Well, it did," I replied, cold as ice, blowing out a cloud of smoke from the cigar. "You're the one who made it end this way." She shook her head slowly, wiping away her tears with trembling hands. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never planned any of it. I don't even know how it got this far." I leaned in closer, staring her right in the eye. "Oh yeah? So what did happen then? Did you just trip and fall into his arms one day? Or was it weeks of flirting, late-night texts, and stolen moments? Come on, Sarah, walk me through it. Tell me how you went from being my wife to his mistress." She flinched at the word mistress, like it stung worse than the mess she'd gotten herself into. But I wasn't about to let her squirm out of this. I needed her to admit it. I needed the truth, even if it ripped me apart. "I don't know, Ben," she muttered, barely audible. "It started slow. At first, it was just harmless conversation. I swear it was. He was easy to talk to, and I didn't think it would go anywhere. And yet, here we are," I snapped back. "It clearly did go somewhere, didn't it?" She nodded, her voice now no more than a whisper. "It was just once at first. I felt awful about it, but once I crossed that line, I couldn't stop. I was already guilty, so what was the point in trying to fix it?" Hearing her finally say it out loud, after weeks of suspicion, felt like a punch to the gut. I'd known deep down, but hearing it spoken made it real in a way that hit harder than I was ready for. "So you just kept on doing it," I said, my voice flat and drained. "You kept cheating because, in your mind, you were already a cheater." She nodded again, her face twisted up in guilt. "I didn't know how to stop. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't face you. I didn't know how to tell you. And Mark, he didn't even mean anything to me, not really. And yet you risked it all for him," I said bitterly. "You threw away our marriage, our future, our life, and for what? Some guy who doesn't even matter." She sobbed harder now, but I wasn't moved. I had nothing left to give. I was numb. Numb to her tears, numb to her regret, and numb to the wreckage that was our life. The cold night air seemed to make everything sharper, clearer. I just sat there, puffing on that cigar she had given me, watching Sarah crumble right in front of me. It was strange. I'd always thought if something like this ever happened, I'd be furious. But right then, I didn't feel rage. Just a dull ache, a hollow pain I knew would stick with me long after this night ended. "So what now?" I asked, not expecting any real answer. "You gonna run off with him? Or are you just gonna keep stringing me along?" She wiped her face, her eyes swollen from crying. "I don't want to be with him, Ben. I never did. He was just... I don't know how to explain it. I was confused, and he was there." I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "Confused? You think that's an excuse? You think that makes it any better? You still did it, Sarah. You still chose him." "I didn't choose him," she whispered. "I just wanted an escape. I felt trapped, like everything in my life was planned out, and I had no control. Our marriage, our daughter, our future, it all felt like something I had to live through, not something I wanted anymore." Her words hit me harder than any confession about the affair. She wasn't just admitting she cheated, she was telling me she didn't even want the life we'd built together. And worse, she had felt this way for a long time, maybe even longer than I realized. "You felt trapped?" I asked, my voice full of disbelief. "Sarah, I've given you everything. You've had freedom, love, support, whatever you wanted you got. How could you possibly feel trapped?" She looked down at her hands, unable to meet my eyes. "I didn't mean it like that. I I don't know, Ben. I can't explain it. It's not your fault. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Then whose fault is it, Sarah? Because it sure as hell isn't mine. I didn't make you cheat. I didn't make you lie. That was all you. She finally looked at me, her face full of regret. I know. I'm sorry, Ben. I really am. Sorry doesn't fix this, I said quietly. Sorry doesn't bring back the trust, the love, or the life we had. You can't just say you're sorry and expect everything to go back to how it was, I said. She nodded, clearly knowing deep down that no apology could undo the damage. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know how to fix this. I let out a long breath, feeling the weight of her words. There was no fixing this. She had destroyed us, shattered everything we built with one selfish choice. And now here we were, trying to figure out what was left of the wreckage. As we sat there, it hit us both. There was no going back. Sarah wiped her face again, struggling to find the right words, but there weren't any. Nothing she said could make me feel better or take back what she'd done. I didn't mean for this to happen, she muttered weakly. I was scared of being alone, of losing everything. But I guess I've lost it all anyway. Yeah, Sarah, you did, I replied, my voice cold and distant. You've lost me. Now we've got to figure out how to untangle our lives and how we explain this to our daughter. That was the part that hurt the most, thinking about our little girl, Lily. She was only 3, innocent, with no idea her mom had just torn our family apart. How was I supposed to look her in the eyes and tell her parents were done? I'll always love Lily, Sarah said, as if that was going to make things better. I know I messed up, but I'll still be there for her. Will you? I asked, bitterness creeping into my voice. Because you sure weren't thinking about her when you cheated. You didn't care about her when you lied. You only thought about yourself. She looked away, wringing her hands in her lap. I'll make it right with her, Ben. I swear. I wasn't sure how she planned to do that, but I knew one thing: Lily deserved better. And if Sarah couldn't be that for her, then I sure as hell would. You can have your freedom, Sarah, I said, my voice firm and final. That's what you wanted, right? To not feel trapped anymore. Well, here it is. I'm done. You don't have to be with me anymore. You can be alone, just like you were so afraid of. Her face crumpled, and she started crying again, but I couldn't bring myself to feel bad for her anymore. I had nothing left to give. She made her choice, and now she had to live with it. I stood up, my legs stiff, but my mind was made up. I'm leaving. You can stay here and deal with your company and your new reputation. They'll probably find out about tonight, if they haven't already. She flinched at that, and I knew it wasn't just our marriage that was over. Her career, the thing she'd poured herself into for years, might be on the line too. But I didn't care anymore. She'd made her bed. Ben, please, she started, but I raised a hand to stop her. No, Sarah. I'm done. You've said everything I need to hear, and I've heard enough. I'm taking Lily, and I'm filing for divorce. I'm not going to fight you over it, but this is it. We're over. She nodded, completely defeated. I understand. I left her sitting there, broken and alone, just like she said she was afraid of being. Maybe that was the worst punishment, letting her have what she thought she wanted. She had destroyed our family, and now she'd have to live with that. As I walked back into the noisy crowd, I realized my life was never going to be the same. I'd be starting over, not just as a man, but as a father, raising Lily on my own. I didn't know how I'd manage it, but I was sure of one thing: I'd give my daughter the love and stability she deserved, even if Sarah couldn't. The police showed up not long after, but by that point, I was calm, ready to face whatever was coming. Sarah bailed me out the next morning, but that was the last time I ever saw her. The divorce went through quietly, and she faded from my life like a bad memory. In the end, it wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was realizing how little she valued the life we built. But I learned something through it all. I could survive this. I could pick up the pieces and move forward, even without her. Lily became my entire world, and we found our new normal. It wasn't easy, but it was real. As for Sarah, well, she got what she wanted, her freedom. But freedom always comes with a price, and I made sure she paid it. That's how it ended, a punch, a confession, and a broken marriage. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but maybe it was the life I needed to see the truth. In the end, sometimes love isn't enough to keep two people together. And sometimes, walking away is the best thing you can do. Hey folks. I just want to take a moment to thank you all for the amazing support, and for sticking with me through my stories on YouTube. Your feedback and enthusiasm really mean a lot. Be sure to stay tuned, there's plenty more coming your way. Take care and see you soon.